Well, Michael Mara's right, of course. The nationalist populism that we've been exposed to for the last 16 years has now well and truly hit the buffers. And I was a little surprised at my friend Willie Rennie being so surprised that the only thing that the SNP have got left in the locker is that we have higher taxes, because that is the characteristic of this SNP government. They reach for higher taxes. Let's not talk about efficiencies. Let's not talk about savings that can be made in government. They're there to be seen, and the public know it. But this government reaches for more taxes, higher taxes, different taxes, incredible tax burdens on the people of Scotland. And then they wonder why it is that when net migration in this country for the last 2 years will be in excess of 1.2 million, that people don't come here. People with skills, people that can make a contribution to our country, they don't come. And perhaps we need to look at ourselves, and perhaps this government and its ministers who have run completely out of ideas now. This is a government that isn't even running on fumes anymore when it comes to ideas. Yes, of course.
John Mason.
I thank the member for giving way. Would you agree with my point that the UK, including Scotland, is paying less in proportion of GDP in tax compared to other European countries?
We've got the highest tax burden, and I'm embarrassed to say this, by the way, as a Conservative. We have the highest tax burden in this country in 80 years. That is not a recipe for economic growth and prosperity. That's, in fact, the recipe for the very opposite of what I think we all want to see happen in our country, which is economic growth and prosperity and shared prosperity. Now, the council tax provides 19% of council funding. It raises £2.6 billion to pay for services at local level. But the thing that needs to be emphasised in relation to local government in this debate is that councils in Scotland, right across Scotland, are now having to deal with the toughest set of budget decisions that they've ever had to make. And that rests on the back of the failure of the Scottish Government, the SNP Scottish Government, who have been a government for 16 years, who have centralised and ring-fenced to their heart's content. But now that's all coming home to roost now, in terms of the fact that the councils that they have deliberately and by design underfunded and defunded for the last decade are now struggling even to cover the costs of basic services. In Falkirk, in my constituency, we see dramatic reductions in bus services, vital bus services, closure of swimming pools, charges for garden waste going up. And many of our authorities in Scotland are at risk of bankruptcy. Indeed, already many of them have started spending reserves on current expenditure, meaning that they are approaching insolvency. Let's be clear, there will be no Section 114 orders as in Birmingham. There won't be any appointments of commissioners, because the legislation in Scotland does not allow for that. So let's hear no self-congratulation about or backslapping about the health of local government born from ignorance of Scotland's legislation. The starving of resources from local government has been a feature, indeed a principal plank, of this government's approach to local democracy. And they have so many allegedly bright ideas which they then provide no funding for. They expect the work to be done without any idea of how much it will cost or who will pay for it. Whether it be a Bairns House or 1,000 extra childminders, these nationally made commitments by nationalist ministers are plonked on the doorstep of local councils with no money to pay for anything. And so to the reform, as it's laughingly called, of council tax, because trying to squeeze ever higher amounts of money out of people who already pay more than their fair share has frankly no justification. This is tinkering. Yes, if I'm allowed.
Person briefly, yeah.
I hope this is at the right juncture, Mr Kerr's speech, but similar to what I asked Mr Rennie, the Conservative Party were not participative in considerations around reform of the council tax previously. Would the Conservative Party be open-minded about that ahead of a 2026 election so we can have a shared position across the parties?
Stephen Kerr.
The Conservative Party is continually reviewing our policies in relation to how we raise money to fund local government. And of course we will be willing participants in any discussions in this Parliament and in any cross-party setting to that end. But let's not get into this. I wouldn't want Ben McPherson, who I have actually a lot of respect for, I wouldn't want him to think that somehow that what hasn't happened for the last 16 years under his government is suddenly going to happen in the next few weeks leading up to the deadline that he's suggested we all work towards. And I'm getting a signal from the presiding officer, quite rightly, that I've gone over my time. And so I will simply say this. Minister, I plea to the Minister to start the process of real local government reform at all, root and branch. And let's just face the reality. Local government in our country is in decline. Local democracy is struggling. And services are at breaking point. And this is a system that needs reform, Deputy Presiding Officer, not another tinkering attempt. This is just thinly disguised tax increases.